Welcome to Grounding Ascension, where we explore topics around activating and integrating our I Am presence, coming back to our true selves. I am your host, Celeste Glus. Aloha, friends, and welcome back to another episode. I am excited for today's episode because I just recently received the information and the true understanding of why the divine feminine is so important at this time. And let me be clear, right? The understanding is forever unfolding, but so many things are clicking into place. And when there is a bigger reason that is shown for certain things that are happening in my life, I just get so excited. So I have been working and bathing in the wisdom of the divine feminine for many years now. And I've also been bathing in the wisdom and the teachings of Ascension, Enlightenment. There's just so many words for it. And yet, in my eyes, there was never a merging of the two. It was almost like I was in love and almost addicted to, because I just couldn't get enough of both of those books of knowledge, let's just call them. And I'm understanding now more than ever before through my own personal experience, through the experience of clients, through conversations, how this is actually one and the same. And the trick is that we have been made to believe that not only are they separate, but perhaps one doesn't even exist, aka the divine feminine, meaning there's no place for it, because as a collective, as people that are awakening, as people that are on their spiritual journey, the divine feminine is not really talked about. And yes, there are a lot of divine feminine groups, absolutely. And that's, of course, because the divine feminine is rising all over the world. But is there talk of understanding the importance of the divine feminine for our ascension process? So let me break this down a little bit. A lot of the teachings and the things that have been passed down through time have been very masculine based. The teachings have been very, let's get out of the body. Let's understand that pleasure is suffering. Let's understand that anything that keeps you in this realm keeps you bound to the lower realm. Okay? So all of these things talk about how the body is not the temple or sacred, and we are trying to expand and activate and get into our light body. And there is no space in those teachings for the wisdom of the divine feminine. And it means the world to me to finally bring them together and understand you cannot have one without the other. You can't, not at this time. So when I tune in to these teachings that have been passed on by many lineages, it is understood that those teachings were given at a time that it was needed for those people in that moment in time of earth consciousness, right? The consciousness of humanity and of earth is continuously evolving and shifting. And so where we are today, most importantly, because this information is relevant for this moment in time, 2021 and forward, where we know that we are now in a new era. We are no longer in the previous era. So the teachings that have allowed people to move through and hold a very specific kind of light served for that time without a doubt. There is no doubt about it. It served a purpose. It was not wrong. But from December 21st, 2012, and then now from 2020 on, there is a new evolutionary consciousness and paradigm, and there are many new realms anchoring in at this time. And it's not so important to get caught up in what that looks like scientifically and all these things. If you're into that, I have a whole course on that. I'm happy to talk about that. But to really understand that if we don't start to anchor into our divine feminine for the purpose of our ascension process, for the purpose of activating our light body, for the purpose of our spiritual evolution, there is no new earth. Because new earth is here and now in this reality. At some point, all of the dimensions will collapse, and they are collapsing. This is the world that we're stepping into. So if anybody is saying that we need to get out of the body and we need to go higher in dimensions and we need to go into this, it doesn't work that way. The essence is that we bring everything into this now moment, into our high heart, and ground it into our womb center. And I'm going to just take it as a go that you've heard other episodes, and that is not a gender bias statement. Understanding that the wisdom of the divine feminine is the reason why the world is why it is today. Meaning, because the divine feminine wisdom has been stripped away for so long, and this is not a victim story. It just is what it is. The wisdom and the teachings of our conscious and subconscious mind in our DNA have been stripped away. Those related to the divine feminine. And now that it is our responsibility as our humanity to birth a new earth, we must now bring back that divine feminine wisdom and also bring in the new codes of consciousness that the cosmic womb that are streaming in at this time from the galactic core. And I don't want you to get caught up in the wording and the language. It's really not important. I want you to more receive the understanding that it is our responsibility as a humanity right now to birth a new way of being. And we're already doing it. So this is not to put any kind of burden on you, but it is to understand that we hold a responsibility, a sacred responsibility to bring back and reawaken the soul of the world, Anima Mundi. And also, just to be clear, she is already awakened. She is already in Earth. She is already in her realities. So it's like both and. Understanding that whether we do it or not, the evolution and the timelines of Earth they're already set in place. She doesn't need us. We need her. The divine feminine wisdom does not need humanity. We need the wisdom of the divine feminine. And we have to be very clear about that. And that in itself is highly humbling. Like, I feel tears in my eyes and I feel my body shake because this is the truth. It is not about, oh, if it's meant to be, then I'll just have it. No. We are supposed to show up for it. And that is the reclaiming and the acceptance of, if you're called to take in the wisdom of the divine feminine, this is the time. There has never been more of a need than now to understand it, to ground it, and to live it. So let's talk a little bit about the descension process into ascension. Understanding that there is no light body, fully activated, incorporated, grounded light body. If we do not descend into our portal of creation, which is our womb. And I'm going to share shortly a little bit about my story. And again, it's not my favorite thing to make this about me, but I do think that when we share stories, it does help to provide contrast and to show what has been and what can be. So just very quickly, my awakening happened very abruptly. And I was experiencing a lot of the things that you may read about in these masculine traditions about not having any attachments to this earth, about simply wanting to be in a meditative state, about activating the energy centers and activating the light body, and really having no attachments, desires, pleasures. There was no reason for me through my spiritual awakening in the very beginning to be in this body, in this human earth. Absolutely none. And hence the reason why I dropped into severe depression and all these other things that I talk about in my book. And it was through that process, at some point, that the goddess arrived. And by the way, I didn't put any of these things together. Like, it never really fully clicked for me until recently. Because that's how this path works, yeah? That's how the path of the awakening and the ascension process works. You're not given a pretty little book and told, hey, this is what you're supposed to do. This is what you're going to live, and this is what it's going to end up, right? Like, you know, I wish it was like that. Oh, how much I wish it was like that, but it's not. And that's also the beauty of it. So looking back, I understand that I needed to experience that contrast, to experience what it felt like to be completely out of body, completely detached. And by the way, I was on the outside living a very beautiful life, very in love with my partner, very just, I had a beautiful life experience. And yet I felt very out of body and out of earth. Absolutely no reason to be here. And this is when the goddess approached me. And I didn't have words for this, but I was deeply initiated in the darkness of the womb. And I was dropped into the death and rebirth cycle from one day to the next. And it took me a full year to recover from that process. An entire full year from front to back, now that I realize. And in that process, I started to ground. I started to realize that there was a purpose for darkness and the void and death and the body and the earthly human experience. And not only was there a purpose, it was the only purpose. It was the whole reason why Ascension exists now. Again, this is pertaining to now. This is not pertaining to the time when the ancient texts were taught and the yogis did their out of body. No. This is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being swept by the arms of the goddess, the wings of the goddess, for this time, as we move into this next phase of humanity, which requires new understandings, new codes, new ways of being. And so I had to be so high out of my body and out of earth to then get dropped down so low that I never wanted to experience that out of body, out of earth sensation again. That's how deep my contrast was. And so, yes, of course, eventually coming back to the middle path and realizing, holy shit, this is the role of the divine feminine in the ascension process. This is it. She is the birther. She is the midwife, right? Literally the doula of the new earth. How could we fathom moving into a new reality if we are not anchored into our sacred temple that is our body? It is completely impossible. So what does this look like, right? What does it look like to activate the divine feminine wisdom within you and to start birthing the new earth? And this is where her teachings come in, recovering the lost wisdom that ultimately your soul knows. If you're listening to this, your soul knows that is necessary. And so when you start to recover and receive the codes and receive the wisdom in whatever way, channel, form, whether it's through my work or somebody else's work, but at some point that play of sitting and receiving must happen, right? Because it's not just given. It doesn't work that way. It must be received. Your soul body must be in a place, in a safe place that is open and ready to receive. So that's the first thing, really deciding to show up for it is part one. And then part two is once you start to receive it, you allow it to integrate. And those teachings will hopefully come from a place that bring you back into your body and not out of your body. So anything that has to do with the divine feminine at this time and space must bring you back into your body. And there's a lot of, because spirituality is so, it's so vast, and it's what people need more than ever at this time, of course, because it's what we are thirsty for. Everything else has fallen apart. When we do not have something to hold on to, what do? We turn to God. We turn to our deeper inner self, that bigger part of us that we do not know, we cannot see, and we cannot touch, but somehow it is there. That's the only thing that's left. And this is what the divine feminine teaches us, is that lives within us and through us, but it cannot be anchored when it's out of us. It cannot be anchored through practices and teachings that take us out of body, that can only serve us for a certain period of time while we are detoxing and we are allowing ourselves to detach from so many programs, belief systems, and addictions of the external realm. And those things, again, they serve a purpose. There's a part of your journey that you will have to detox. You will have to, of course, detach from things that have manipulated your essence. And then you must return. You must return to that deeper part of self, and that is inside your body. And those are the fundamentals of the divine feminine teachings, that we have to come back in order to rise. We have to descend into our bodies and into our wombs in order to ascend and truly activate the full essence of our light body. And this is a reminder too, to not let the experiences of the outer realms or the interdimensional realms lure you, right? To put on this light show for you, to make you believe that there is something outside of you, bigger and better, that must have the answers. The wisdom of the divine feminine teaches us that it is through our bodies, it is through remembering, it is through the living experience of the here and now that we get to activate these codes, that we get to be the ones who birth the new earth. It is actually through the pleasure principle and the desire to experience this reality, the desire to experience love. Not only love for this path of spiritual knowledge and enlightenment in the light body, because I know what that feels like. I know I was there. I was obsessed with that. And that obsession was what took me out of body, was what showed me what it was to be connected to the cosmic universe. And yet, from that such a high place, like all of the teachings tell us, everything must be balanced out. So just as we go that high, we must drop as low. If we are not walking the middle path, that is the natural law of life and the universe. And so because I was up there so high, I had to drop so low and then find my way in between. And now, only now am I realizing the importance of activating and remembering the wisdom of the divine feminine in order for us to ascend here and now, in order for us to move through what's happening on this world at this time and birth the new, to create safe places and safe communities and loving communities based on real life circumstances and relationships and love and desire, to ground in the sensuality of this experience. And I'm not saying that once you remember the divine feminine and you're on this ascension path, you're going to be waking up sensually and pleasurable every day. Of course not. But there is a role for that. And when we start to activate that, we know where to turn when things get rough. And we know how to come back to our center and then move from that place. And that is our pillar of light. When we have balanced out the practices of the masculine and the feminine, there's no other way. Just as the world has been fallen in the distorted patriarchal teachings and consciousness, we must be careful now not to fall into the distorted matriarchal consciousness, but allow ourselves to come back to the middle path. Truly allow ourselves to have the courage and the vulnerability to open up the deeper heart and then anchor that frequency into our womb. Because it's through our womb that we're able to create. So I hope that this had shed some light a little bit on the importance of understanding the wisdom of the divine feminine in your path of awakening and in your spiritual journey. And may your journey always be grounded and guided by the highest love and the deepest soul-nourishing pleasure principle and the desire principle, while being able to expand into new levels of awareness. So every time we anchor in more, we actually activate and go higher. We have to root in order to rise. We have to descend in order to ascend. It happens at the same time, and then sometimes it happens separately, like it did in my case. But we cannot just do one. We cannot stay up in the ethers, and we also cannot stay down in the darkness, in the inverted realities. We have to come back to center. We have to come back to our center, our heart and womb connection. And that, my friends, is descension into ascension. I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. I ask that you share with other friends that perhaps may receive some light, some guidance, some support at this time, most especially. And also a reminder that the Woman Wisdom Mentorship is open, and we talk about so many of these things and so much more. We talk about obviously activating the divine feminine and living it, and relationship dynamics and sacred sexuality and the new rose code for this new time. So if you're interested, definitely check that out. I am also including the Activate Womb Wisdom course, which is created so that you can have a 4-week plan into not only natural birth control, but understanding the role of fertility in your life, in your body. Because once we feel empowered and anchored in as a woman with a womb to this force field that is within us, we cannot say that we're anchored if we don't understand the mechanics of the womb and we don't feel empowered by our cycle, it's kind of hard to say that you are anchored in the divine feminine wisdom and yet you feel oblivious to what is happening within your cycle and how to use the energy of fertility. It's all one stream. So I've decided to include that as a free bonus. And also I'm gifting the Cyclical Living Planner in this round of Woman Wisdom Mentorship. So it's really giving you the foundations for you to step fully into receiving this wisdom and the codes and everything that is streaming through that is so necessary to birth the new earth now. Not tomorrow, not next decade, not when your kids grow up, no, not after you get pregnant, now. And I say that, of course, lovingly, because sometimes we think we're just going to wait until this thing is over. We're just going to wait. There's no more waiting. The divine feminine understands that we must take sacred responsibility here and now for the things that our intuition asks us to take responsibility for. So definitely check out the Woman Wisdom Mentorship if that's something that calls you. There is still time to register. So just contact me, email me, and I'd love to speak to you. And if that's not something that calls you, then I just am happy to have you here and to be connecting, whether you're listening to this in 2021 or any other time. I send you so much love, and remember to always anchor in to your true essence. Mahalo. Mwah.